watching RTE 1.
It's 6-1, RTE News with Brian Dobson and Sharon Niviolan.
A damning report on child abuse in the Dublin Archdiocese. Hundreds of victims, but the bishop puts the church before child safety.
As Archbishop of Dublin and as Dermot Martin a person, I offer to each and every survivor my apology, my sorrow and my shame.
The Minister for Justice promises that no one is above the law.
The bottom line is this: a collar will protect no criminal.
The Taoiseach faces the frustration of flood victims.
People's livelihoods are destroyed here. We need barriers, we need help.
Crown surveys the Shannon flood damage right across the Midlands.
He did give us his word that he would sort out the problem for us.
The fatal stabbing of Arklow shopkeeper John D.C. Gordy's search for the murder weapon. And a hero's welcome for a legendary footballer. Pele charms another generation of fans.
Just to see the best footballer in the world. So.
Good evening and welcome to 6-1. It is a damning condemnation of Church, State and the Gardaí. The report of the Commission of Investigation into the Catholic Archdiocese of Dublin, published today, details how for decades sexual abuse of children by clergy was deliberately covered up, the abusers protected, the victims ignored. The report says the Archdiocese, in dealing with cases of abuse, at least until the mid-1990s, was preoccupied with the maintenance of secrecy, the avoidance of scandal, the protection of the reputation of the Church and the preservation of its assets. The report says all other considerations, including the welfare of children and justice for the victims, were subordinated to these priorities. The report also strongly criticises the Gardaí, saying that senior Gardaí regarded priests as being outside their remit, and it claims there are examples of Gardaí reporting abuse complaints to the diocese rather than investigating them.
3 years in the making, 700 pages long, the Commission's report is a shocking litany of abuse and failures. It examined the Dublin Archdiocese's handling of complaints of abuse of 320 children against a sample of 46 priests between 1995 and 2004, 11 of whom have been convicted. But in total it received allegations in relation to 183 priests. One of the priests admitted sexually abusing over 100 children. Another admitted abusing on a fortnightly basis over 25 years. The report is highly critical of the Archdiocese, saying for decades its preoccupations were secrecy and the Church's reputation. It says the Archdiocese didn't implement canon law and did its best to avoid applying the laws of the state. There was little or no concern for the welfare of the abused child or for the welfare of other children who might come into contact with the priest. There was a don't ask, don't tell attitude. Complainants were often met with denial, arrogance and cover-up, and with incompetence and incomprehension in some cases. It concludes there's no doubt abuse was covered up by the Archdiocese and other church authorities. The bishops involved in investigating and dealing with complaints about abuse all are criticized. A number didn't act on complaints of abuse in their areas and appointed priests without any reference to clouds hanging over them. It also says a number dealt particularly badly with complaints. Now retired, Bishop Dermot O'Mahony failed to tell his superior about a number of complaints and allowed a psychiatric report on Father Ivan Payne to be relied upon, even though it was clearly inaccurate. It says now deceased Bishop James Kavanagh failed to deal properly with a priest who had pleaded guilty to abuse and also tried to influence the Garda handling of criminal complaints. And it says the failure of Bishop Donal Murray, now Bishop of Limerick, to investigate a particular allegation was inexcusable. According to the Commission, all informal Archbishop held land abuse complaints badly, with not one correlation against from the 1960s to 1990s. Archbishop John Charles McQuaid's dealings with one priest in 1960 were aimed at avoiding scandal and showed no concern for the welfare of children. Archbishop Dermot Ryan failed to properly investigate complaints against 6 priests and ignored advice from a psychiatrist in relation to another who was later convicted. Archbishop Kevin McNamara restored duties to a priest after he pleaded guilty to abusing in 1983 and promoted another serial abuser. And it says it took Archbishop Desmond Connell some time to realise that abuse couldn't be dealt with by keeping it secret and protecting priests from normal civil processes. It also claims Archbishop Connell's strategies in refusing to admit liability often added to the hurt and grief of many complainants. This afternoon, the government apologised for inaction.
Successive governments failed in their responsibilities as legislators to put in place a comprehensive child protection legislative framework. Where there still remains a gap in child welfare and protection legislation, the government will take the necessary steps to put the appropriate legislation in place.
But welcome as it will be, it's legislation that will come too late for many. Will Goodbody, RTE News.
Strong criticism is reserved for the role of Gardaí in their investigations of child sex abuse. The Garda Commissioner said he was deeply sorry the victims did not receive the level of response and protection to which they were entitled.
This report is highly critical of how senior Garda officers, including 1 Garda Commissioner and 2 Chief Superintendents, dealt with clerical child sexual abuse. Former Commissioner Daniel Costigan, seen here on Charles Haughey's right, is strongly criticised for, in 1960, failing to investigate a priest who took photographs of children naked in Crumlin Children's Hospital. Scotland Yard alerted the Gardaí when the photos were sent to England to be developed, but the Commissioner breached his duty and handed the case over to the Archbishop, John Charles McQuaid. In 1986, 2 Gardaí failed to take notes when interviewing a priest who admitted abusing children. The file on the case later went missing. The priest also made admissions to a Chief Superintendent, Joe McGovern, but he told the parish priest, not the investigation team. The Commission found this shocking and says the Gardaí connived with the church. Another sergeant refused to believe that serial child abuser Father Donald Gallagher was anything but sincere and genuine and failed to properly investigate allegations against him.
The bottom line is this: a collar will protect no criminal.
The report has praised the work of junior Gardaí and singles out Garda Finbar Garland, who was so shocked and disgusted by the acts of former priest, the paedophile Bill Carney, that he investigated with speed and efficiency. The report also found that Bishop James Kavanagh's attempts to influence the investigation were not successful because lower-ranking Gardaí did their job properly. This afternoon, the Garda Commissioner said he was deeply sorry for what had occurred. Faulkner Murphy said that new investigation procedures and facilities, in line with best international practice, are now in place. There's no doubt that in the past some paedophile priests were not prosecuted for abusing children because of an undue and misguided deference among some senior Gardaí towards the church and its representatives. And while the Gardaí here today are now appealing for anyone with information on cases like this to come tomorrow for the time here, and they say that they will initiate fresh prosecutions if they find new evidence. It's highly unlikely that any Gardaí identified in today's report will be prosecuted because naivety, negligence and blind faith in the church are not criminal offences. Paul Reynolds, RTE News, at the Garda's Sexual Assault Unit in Dublin.
Victims' groups have welcomed the publication of the report. The 1 in 4 organisation called for a criminal investigation into those who colluded and conspired to protect sex offenders and the institutional church. Andrew Madden, a survivor of child abuse, said the report was a shocking indictment of the Catholic Church in Dublin.
The Church failed us. They failed us as Catholics. They failed me as a human being. It takes my soul. 4 short sentences from one victim, but which were echoed by several others, according to the authors of today's report. Feelings echoed by the likes of Mary Collins, who was one of the first to go public with her abuse. Having reported the allegations 25 years ago, today has been a long time coming.
For me personally, it is closure. It's 25 years since I first reported my abuse, and to have it now on paper, confirmed, and that people now know what was happening. My whole thing was that unless people believed what had been happening in the past, it could go on happening. And I think now children, because this has been revealed and confirmed, that children in future will be safer.
Victims' groups welcomed the publication of the report, but expressed shock at the level of collusion between the church and state authorities.
The most shocking aspects is the report is the failure of the civil authorities. You know, I think since Ferns and the Ryan report, we are not surprised at the cover-ups in the church. But when we have a report describing the guards as conniving with the church, as having inappropriate relationships with the church, and of not carrying out their job, I feel my heart sink when I hear that.
It's not just enough to have the report, because there are other things that need to happen. That's just the admission first, and then we have